Hello, my name is Yash, and today we will be talking about 10th Standard Chapter 1 Location and Extent of India and Brazil. Let's first take a introduction of India and Brazil. India is the second most populous country in the world, and it is famous for spices. That is why British invaded us. Then the most popular sport in India is cricket, of course. Then let's look at Brazil. Brazil is very famous for its samba dance. Then it is also known as the coffee pot of the world because most of the coffee in the world is exported from Brazil. You should remember that. For last almost 150 years, Brazil is exporting coffee on the large scale, and the famous sport in Brazil is football. Now let's the proper names of India and Brazil are India is the proper name of India is Republic of India, and the capital of India is New Delhi, and the proper name of Brazil is Federative Republic of Brazil, and the capital is Brasilia. So now let's look at the location and extent. Before location and extent, I would like to tell you something. This is the Earth. Now, if we cut the Earth in between horizontally, we will find a topper part and a bottom part. The top part is known as the northern hemisphere because it is in the north, and this is the southern hemisphere. In the same way, if we cut the Earth in between vertically, we will find this is the western hemisphere and this is the eastern hemisphere as according to the maps. So now, when we talk about the Earth and when we cut it in the middle to get a northern and the southern hemisphere, we call this line, the cutting line is known as the equator. This is how we can locate a country, whether it is in the northern hemisphere or in the southern hemisphere. So now, location and extent of India, we will look at that first. India is in the northern hemisphere, the upper part. Yes, and if we do it vertically, it is in the eastern hemisphere. Okay. Yes. Now the extent is very important. India's latitude. The latitudes are the horizontal imaginary lines drawn on the Earth or the world map to locate a particular location, and longitudinal are the vertical imaginary lines drawn on the map so that we can find a particular place on the map. So India's latitudinal extent will be like this from 6 degree 4 minutes north to 37 degree 6 minutes north. 6 degree 4 minutes to 37 degree 6 minutes north. Now why north? Because even the southernmost part of India is known as north because it is in the northern hemisphere. So that we need to remember. Now from longitudinal extent, we will get India as 68 degrees 7 minutes east because it is in the eastern hemisphere, 68 degrees 7 minutes east to 97 degree 25 minutes east. So this is what you need to remember. These are the location and extent. Now the India's southernmost part is 6 degree 4 minutes north. That is the southernmost part. It is one of the questions in your exercises. The 6 degree 4 minutes north is known as the Indira point, which is the southernmost part of India, the southernmost part of India. Now let's look at the extent or the location and extent of Brazil. So Brazil is in the northern hemisphere, but it is not completely in the northern hemisphere. The equator which divides the Earth into northern and southern hemisphere passes through the Brazil. So it is not completely in the northern hemisphere. Some part is in the northern hemisphere and most of the part is in southern hemisphere. It is more than half of the part is in southern hemisphere. So Brazil is divided into both northern and southern hemisphere. So the when we talk about the latitudes, it is from 5 degree 15 minutes north, that is above the equator, 5 degrees 15 minutes north to 33 degrees south. 5 degree 15 minutes north to 33 degree south. That is what the latitudinal extent of Brazil is. Now let's look what are the longitudinal extent. It is, first of all, it is in the western hemisphere. So India was in the eastern hemisphere and Brazil is in the western hemisphere. So now let's look at the longitudinal extent of Brazil. Longitudinal extent of Brazil are from 34 degree 4 minutes west, because it is in the western hemisphere, 34 degrees 4 minutes west to 73 degrees 5 minutes west. 34 degree 4 minutes west to 73 degree 5 minutes west. These are the longitudinal extent of Brazil. It is very important. You need to remember this. Now let's look at the neighboring countries of India and Brazil. So in east, so this is India and this is east of India. So east of India there is Myanmar, then there is Bangladesh, then there is Bhutan, and if we see the sea in the east of India, it is Bay of Bengal. So these are the 4 countries. Then in north we have Afghanistan. A small part of Afghanistan touches India. Then China and Nepal too. You cannot call it exactly northern, but it is northeastern part of India, and Nepal is situated there. So this is north. In west we have Pakistan. That is the only country, neighbor country in west. And then the sea which is surrounding India in the west is Arabian Sea, as we all know. The south of India has Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is one of the neighbors in the south, and no other country in south. And we have the Indian Ocean surrounding India. India has a very big coastline. We have Indian Ocean in the southern part of India. So these are the neighboring countries, seas and oceans of India. Now let's look at Brazil. So in Brazil we have in east we have a whole of a coastline, and in east we have Atlantic Ocean. Now as the equator passes, the Atlantic Ocean is divided into Northern Atlantic Ocean and the Southern Atlantic. One of the questions in your exercises that Brazil is in the eastern part is surrounded by Pacific Ocean. So that is wrong. We know that now that it is surrounded by Atlantic Ocean. In the north, we have several countries. We have French Guiana, Guyana, Venezuela, Colombia. So these are the 4 countries in the north of Brazil. You need to remember this. You need to locate them on the map and try to remember them very strategically in the map. In west we have 3 countries: Peru, Bolivia and Paraguay. Okay, Peru, Bolivia and Paraguay. In south we have 2 countries, Argentina and Uruguay. So these are the Brazil can be a little difficult to remember, but we need to remember this for good marks. Now let's look at the history and the background, which is very easy, and it is India. For India, we know that India was under British rule for almost 150 years, and India got its independence in 1947. India is a democratic republic country. It is one of the major developing countries in the world. Most of the population in India is young generation. That is why this generation is known as the working generation. So India is known as the young country also. Now let's look at the history and background of Brazil. Brazil was a country ruled by Portuguese for almost 3 centuries, which is almost 300 years. And in 1822 they got their freedom. But from 1930 to 1985 they had this populist military rule, and this was changed to democratic republic after 1985, and hence they started overcoming all the economic crisis in their country. The economic growth is high in Brazil also as in India, and it is also one of the future markets, the global markets of the world. And this is a very short lesson. Here we finish off the lesson.